What up, Fightful fam, and welcome to 1-2 Punch. Player 1, Shakiel Mahjouri. Player 2, Easy E, Spencer Kyte. How's it going, buddy?
Going well, man. How about you?
I'm doing well. Can't complain. Sorry, guys, for the slightly late start. I basically don't have my shit together, but here we are. And I hope that doesn't get us de-added right off the bat, but it probably will. What you gonna do about it? All right, guys, welcome to 1-2 Punch. If you're a fan of the program, thank you for being here as always. If it's your first time, maybe you hopped on the Spencer Kyte bandwagon over to Fightful MMA, let me give you a quick rundown of how we operate. It's news talk, but it's on a win-lose-draw system. What that means is we're going to sign the week's biggest winners and losers before drawing up a little preview for UFC Vegas 20. Just a clarifier here, we're not calling people winners and losers except for when I am. But it just means whose stock went up, whose stock went down, promotions, pay-per-view numbers, whatever we got going on. Let me hit my snazzy animated intro. Oh, that's the wrong one. Boom. There we go. All right, quick reminder, guys. If you can please hit subscribe, tap the notification bell, leave a like on this video. All those small acts go such a long way to helping us run smoothly. We really do appreciate it. Hit us up in the chat. We love hearing from you guys. Most importantly, it lets me know that things are running smoothly. I don't have to keep putting my ear to my headphones like a maniac. And if you're feeling extra generous, a little super chat donation would really warm the heart. All right, Spencer, that's enough of me shilling. And I got to know right now, for the remainder, I know you, but for those who don't, are we calling you E or Spencer for the remainder of the program?
Oh, we're Spencer. There's no entourage references. There's no just E. It's there for byline purposes only. No one other than my mother calls me ever references my first name. So
Right.
that's it.
I will say though, I feel like the E stands out. It's good for the
It's
byline.
handy. Yeah, it's handy. It's great for the byline. It's a reference to my grandfather, who's one of my kind of artistic influences. So it's
Very
it's
cool.
it's welcome to be there. I'm happy to have it there. It's been there from the jump, but yeah, nobody drops any E's.
All right, let's get on with the show. We're going to go with the winners first before moving on to the losers. So, it's a few days removed, but considering from a name value perspective, Saturday's card's a little limited. People are still talking about Derrick Lewis, the Black Beast, coming up with that huge uppercut win, knocked out Curtis Blaydes cold in a fight that up until that point, Blaydes was handedly winning from my perspective. Here we are, Derrick Lewis, who I think for a long time, people, myself included, have sort of been labeling as like a guy who's always got that one-shot knockout power, but isn't really a title threat at the end of the day. But here we have him, probably like number 2 in the division. And when the smoke clears between Miocic, Ngannou, and John Jones, he's probably your guy to get the next shot if things continue going this way. Do you think Derrick Lewis, beyond a puncher's chance, I know in a sense that's a big part of his game, but realistically, do you think there's a chance by 2023 we could see Derrick Lewis as world heavyweight champion?
Ooh. I'm gonna say no, but it has nothing to do with Derrick Lewis. It has more to do with the people that are ahead of him or the
Mm-hmm.
other people in the division. I think Derrick has really improved. And I think as much as we always talk about, as you said, the puncher's chance and the thing that sucks about a performance like last weekend against Curtis Blaydes is that a lot of people will look at it and go, oh, well, that's just the thing Derrick Lewis can do is
Yeah.
land one. But there's elements to it and there's pieces to these last few fights that to me have really been kind of flying under the radar. It's a 4-fight winning streak since he had knee surgery to repair the ACL that was bugging him for years, that caused some of the back problems. He's now able to do more of a strength and conditioning routine, better overall training regimen than he had kind of on that way up. And so I think there's a little bit of improvement and development that kind of goes unnoticed because Derrick is always just going to fight the way he does. But I mean, he's a guy that I think is very much capable of just sticking around that top 5, top 3. He may not win the title because there's the Miocic, the Ngannou, there's John Jones coming. There's the guys that are fighting on Saturday that are in that conversation as well. But I think he's very much in that mix. And when you have that puncher's chance, absolutely anything could happen if he does get in there.
I gotta stop you. What did you say? Miocic?
Miocic?
Is that how you pronounce it?
Miocic?
Dude, I don't know if anyone can get their thumb on the pulse of how you actually pronounce
positive, yeah.
Yeah.
Miocic.
Like, there are names that people pronounce wrong, like Nurmagomedov, but we kind of unanimously do it. I can't think of another fighter whose last name is so disputed, and it's like 5 letters.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this then. Francis Ngannou, Derrick Lewis 1 was perhaps the stinker of all stinkers. Those two big boys left some big duties in the cage. How do you see a rematch going? Do you think it would be more exciting? Was that a product of a Francis Ngannou with shattered confidence coming out of the Stipe fight? Or is this, do we see it going the same way? What would you make of a rematch there?
I think a lot of it had to do with that Stipe fight. I mean, he talked about it, right? That fight absolutely broke him down in terms of his confidence. It made him super hesitant. I think what Daniel Cormier talked about this week is a part of it as well. You see the power that Derrick Lewis has. You see his ability to change a fight in an instance, and you don't necessarily want to engage, especially if you're a guy that's coming off that kind of humbling loss that Francis Ngannou had. So it makes you that extra step, and your boss has, absolutely hammered you after that fight. So you don't want to make any more mistakes, and then you go out and have that fight. I think it goes differently because I think they're both just different fighters. I mean, part of it too is 2 sides to every fight, right? Francis Ngannou didn't engage, but Derrick Lewis was super injured, was super incapable of doing some of the stuff that we expect from Derrick Lewis. So I think healthier, both physically and mentally, for both of these guys, it turns into a different fight. I think we probably get the fight that we expected the first time, but there is always that possibility. It's kind of like when we get the 2 kickboxers, it turns into a wrestling match. 2 grapplers, it turns into a bad kickboxing match. There is a possibility that they just look at each other and neither one of them really wants to get too close, and we end up getting a repeat of that staring contest.
I wouldn't want to. All right, and this final question on this is going to be kind of moot by the time the dust settles, but just for fun, looking at where Stipe, Francis, and John Jones are at right now, there are so many variables. What's Stipe going to feel like after 3 wars with Daniel Cormier? Has Francis Ngannou really improved in the wrestling department? And what does John Jones look like at heavyweight? But with all those unknowns in mind, who do you think Derrick Lewis has the best chance of beating out of those 3 guys?
Out of those 3 guys, I would probably, this is going to sound wild, but it's probably Francis Ngannou.
I agree.
Just because you don't have to worry as much about the wrestling. If he gets in there with Stipe, it's going to look a lot like the fight with Daniel Cormier and a lot like Stipe's fight with Francis Ngannou. Get in, mix it up a little bit on the feet, but lean heavy on the wrestling. I think John Jones is smart enough to do the same. You don't want to mess around with that power. And so I think it's Francis Ngannou, which is a really weird statement given that Francis Ngannou hasn't needed more than like 90 seconds to beat someone in 3 years.
I would never, if someone's like, you got to be a UFC fighter, what division are you fighting at? I would not pick heavyweight, man. Like, the bodies do not always grow in proportion with the head. Like, you get to a point where your opposition is so big and you can dole out punishment, but you can't take it to the same degree that someone in a lighter weight class might be able to. It's sometimes just, especially with the no crowd, sometimes when you hear the thud between 2 big boys, it's scary, man.
And it's a different sound. Like, you sit there and you hear it. And I mean, I've been at some of Derrick's fights. I've been at, we've all seen a bunch of heavyweight fights live, and it sounds different, and it's really scary. Because if the UFC said right now, I have to step into the octagon, I have to fight at that division. And so that probably should be, reason for me to try to get to 205. Because I'm only 5'10", like I don't have the size to really fight in that division. I'm Roy Nelson, and I don't want to be doing that. So yeah, that's probably good reason for me to get to light heavy.
Anyone looking to shut off the quarantine 15, the COVID-19, just know one day someone might force you into an octagon out of your weight class. That's good. All right, let's move on because we have a bunch of topics to cover. This next one, people are going to hate. I might just tune off right now. I get so much shit online every time that I bring up the words Jake Paul. But what people don't seem to understand is that not only is this business from the top down, it may not be what I want to talk about, but it's definitely what draws company money, are the words Jake Paul. And that's not a consequence of what I'm putting out there. It's a consequence of what people are digesting. And I think that's a big thing that people get wrong a lot of times. But look, every time I rip one of Jake Paul's videos off Twitter and put it on YouTube, it is the best performing video of the week. And maybe that says something about my own quality of work, but it's true nonetheless. Jake Paul comes out with another one of these, like 2 minute, 1 minute, 2 minute parodies where he's pretending to be different fighters. And look, people think that his brand of comedy is stupid, and guess what? It's pretty damn stupid. But, and this is what I say, MMA from an entertaining personality standpoint is a vacuum. It is a endless black hole of bland, boring people. So the reality is, it doesn't take much more than a Jake Paul putting on a Habib wig and a bad accent and saying some nonsense to get people's attention, because we're that starved. You yourself in a DM described it as like what, mildly amusing?
Yeah, it's mildly amusing. Exactly.
That is all it takes. Do you think? I mean, I think it's been proven, but what do you make of Jake Paul's sort of brushes with combat sports and MMA? Look, we all know he's not going to get in there with Conor, Nate, Habib, any of the bunch. But do you see a problem in what he's doing and what it means for like the overall sport?
I don't, in that he's clearly figured out the right lane for him.
Yeah.
And to he and his brother's credit, they are taking the boxing side of it seriously. They are actually training. They're getting in shape. They are learning the craft. Are they necessarily are they trying to be world champions? Of course not. They are trying to make as much money as quickly as possible. And they have figured out a wonderful little lane to travel down that is going to help them achieve that goal. And so I get the purists that say, it's terrible that Jake Paul and Logan Paul are two of the biggest names we're talking about in boxing right now or in combat sports right now. And I would 100% be on that side of things from there's other people more accomplished, more successful, more deserving of that attention. But as you said, this is what people are talking about. These are the people that fans and consumers are gravitating towards. And so as much as it really does pain me to say this, I have to give them their due. They have figured it out. They have cornered the market on nonsense videos, nonsense, drive-by water balloonings of Dylan Dennis, picking fights with dudes that they could probably beat in fights. That's the other part. They're winning. They're winning. And so, Logan Paul is not beating Floyd Mayweather. That they've fought thus far.
Okay, let's get to that. I think we can all say that Floyd's going to box the ever-living crap out of Logan Paul. But I want your prediction right now. Ben Askren, Jake Paul, what's happening?
Man...
That's
the answer. That's the answer. That's my answer. Yeah. Because I want to sit here and be like, Ben Askren is a world class wrestler, great mixed martial artist, but it's neither of those things. Yep. It's boxing, and Ben's boxing isn't great, and so
I feel so bad because Ben has been like very accessible, relatively accessible to me.
He's a great dude.
Yep. Very nice. Gave me some great content that we still haven't gotten to publish. I gotta get that up. I feel bad even. I try to avoid this conversation like the plague because I like Ben Askren.
I understand why he's doing it. I understand why he was kind of the guy that they were like, yep, well, that's the fight we'll take. That makes sense. It was funny in the video, right? That
was the best part of the video. I'm so sorry, Ben. You could, and people almost unanimously agreed on this point. Like, the video was whatever. It was Jake Paul with some bad imitations. But then when he gets to the point where he's got a Ben Askren wig on, going like this with the Soulja Boy Superman song playing, I lost my cool.
The Diaz one was pretty good. It's a pretty solid Diaz. Like, the Diaz impression isn't hard. You just have to speed mumble your way through things. It was pretty solid.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's get to the next topic at hand. Let me make sure. I'm not missing anything here. Okay. We'll kind of do a 2-in-1 here. Anthony Pettis and the PFL. The PFL, man, they got a bunch of good stars. It's starting to feel like the UFC is getting to a point that it's so large that it has to part ways with some bigger names that are now finding homes in smaller organizations and hopefully elevating those. Because I'll tell you this, even though I cover the sport, I don't consume a whole lot of PFL. I'll be tuning in for Anthony Pettis versus Clay Collard. Dude, Anthony Pettis, no offense to Clay, he's actually done a great job over in boxing.
Yeah.
But you have to imagine Showtime is not only the favorite in that fight, but possibly the favorite all throughout the tournament. So you could be cashing in on a cool $1 million by the end of this. Now that we've had some time to sort of, digest this, how good of a move do you think it was for Showtime to make his way to PFL?
I think it's a great move. I mean, I think for a guy like him, for a guy like Rory McDonald, for Fabricio Verdum, to go over, and I mean, anybody that's done it, and I talked with Sarah Kaufman a bunch last year or 2 years ago now, when she was in the lightweight tournament, a big part of it is just that certainty, or that assumed certainty of knowing that you're going to get X number of fights a year. If you are confident that you're going to get to the finals, it's 5 fights in a defined period of time. You know what your money is going to be. You can kind of plan out your life. And so for a fighter like Anthony, who is like amazing idea, planning out life and knowing what kind of revenue you're going to make, it's great. And for a guy like Anthony, who's at the kind of taking big fights, being really selective about things in the UFC, as he should be at this point of his career, it's a terrific opportunity to go over there, be one of the faces of this promotion. It's got a good TV. They've got a good TV deal. They've got good opportunities, and just go out and, he's confident he's going to get through it. It's another good field. It's always a good field in that bracket. And so it's a great opportunity for him, and it makes all the sense in the world to me.
Shout out to the live chat, guys. Sorry that we've been ignoring you guys. We'll get to it before we move on to the losers portion of the section. Now let's touch on PFL real quick. It appears that they've got another round of funding. I'm not super privy to the inner workings of, what it means for a company's long-term potential when they can get these sort of investments. Who do you think is going to make a bigger splash by the end of 2021? Bellator or the PFL? Relative to their size, I guess.
I think the PFL, I think the tournament, the regular season kind of tournament-y format creates opportunities and creates talking points. Okay. As much as I love Bellator doing the Grand Prix kind of always never really work out the way we want them to. They take too long, stuff happens, there's injuries. That's one of the things I like about the regular season and then into the playoff format of PFL, is that there's an opportunity for guys that we don't know, or men and women that we don't know, to kind of have a little moment in the regular season and move forward and get some of that momentum going into the second part of things. Yeah. And so I think with some of the names that they've brought over that we talked about already, Anthony Pettis, Fabricio Verdum, Rory McDonald, and some of the holdover guys that they have that now get a little bit of shine from these guys that have come in, I think they're the ones that are going to have the bigger year, because I think on the whole, we're a little bit more curious to see what that next round of new names that have gone over there do.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And like I said, I'm very excited for, honestly, both the PFL and Bellator. I think it's going to be an exciting year for both promotions. Maybe sooner or later we can get some, I feel like a Rory McDonald, Anthony Pettis fight could be kind of fun. Eventually, one day, perhaps.
Well, and it's just going to be nice to see, like, it sucked that PFL didn't have a season last year. It's really unfortunate. It's tough for all the people that are under contract there. It's nice to see Lance Palmer come back and try to three-peat. Yeah. It's nice to see the Brazilian guy whose name is escaping me at lightweight come back and try to...
Gleison Tebow?
No, the guy that's won their tournament the last 2 years, Nathan Schultz, I think. Okay. Come back and try to get another one. He gets the bump of potentially fighting Anthony Pettis. I'm forever going to be intrigued by Kayla Harrison. So it's nice to have them back, and it's nice to see
Do
some
you,
of those people that they've already had get that shine off the names we already know.
do you know, like, after taxes and stuff, how much that million they actually take home?
I don't.
All right, be interesting to find out. All right, last thing on the winners end. Oh man, this is a hard one for me. But Walt Harris and his wife Angela launched Anaya's Heart Foundation to help families with a missing loved one. So of course, if you were in the dark for some reason, 2019, Walt Harris and his wife's daughter was kidnapped and murdered. Hence a very long layoff for Walt. I mean, there's not much I want to say here other than the fact that, boy, do I love to see that Walt and his wife are able to take this like unspeakable horror and use it to not only sort of fuel their daughter's legacy, but also help other people.
Yeah, it's been really, I mean, anybody that has ever talked to Walt or knows Walt, or you talk to anybody that knows Walt, 100% one of those guys that you absolutely root for, and just a great dude. So to see all of this come upon he and his family over the last couple of years has just been devastating. But a great piece up by Gavin Porter at UFC.com talking with them about launching this program, about launching this foundation and what they're aiming to do, kind of detailing the different areas they're going to be involved in. Walt and Angela doing great things to sort of, as you said, further Anaya's legacy and turn this tragedy into something that can be productive, that hopefully, as they said in the piece that Gavin put together, hopefully they can help other people that are stuck and end up in the same unspeakable situation, navigate it where they didn't necessarily have the resources or have the knowledge. It is a terrible thing to be familiar with and to have understanding of and experience with. But if they can take that and turn it into something helpful going forward, it's an amazing thing. It shows the strength of that family, of those individuals. And it's great to see everybody getting behind it and sharing that story.
Agree wholeheartedly. All right, guys, it's the third point of the video, although these next two sections won't be quite as long. Fortunately, not too many losers. Quick reminder, if you can please hit subscribe, tap the notification bell, leave a like on this video. Super chat, if you're feeling generous, goes a long way. Want to give a quick shout out in the chat to Axiom Films, friends of Fightful MMA. They asked about Rozenstruik versus Gane. We'll get to that at the end. But I gotta say, guys, if you're not subscribed to Axiom Films, go do so. They put together the raddest short films and promos for the big UFC fights, and not just because they take a snippet of my voice here and there. The work they do is truly remarkable, way better than what the UFC produces. So go show them some love. All right, Joseph Bose in the chat says, I think people are still talking about Derrick Lewis because we've been training that Curtis Blaydes will beat everyone not named Francis Ngannou. If not for the clogged heavyweight division, Lewis should be the #1 contender. Let's touch on that super briefly. So there was definitely a narrative where Curtis Blaydes is the best heavyweight contender not named Francis Ngannou. And here's the thing. Even in a Derrick Lewis fight, I think he showed to be the superior overall mixed martial artist, but he ran into that power, and he's done so a few times. It's hard to call it a chin issue at heavyweight, but what does Curtis Blaydes need to fix here if he really wants to cash in as that second or third best heavyweight that for a long time we believed him to be?
So I'll start it by saying I am not a technical analyst. I am not a coach, nor have I ever pretended to be one on television. But to me, you go back and you look at just that sequence, just that kind of uppercut that landed, and it's a naked shot. It's a telegraphed shot. And so a simple thing like Derrick not being able to just kind of sit and wait on that uppercut, and Curtis changes levels and comes in without any setup. Those are little things. You watch the second fight with Francis Ngannou, and I mean, he just got Francis Ngannou. Like the guy comes at you. I know I watched the slow-mo replay of Ngannou's fight with Rozenstruik a couple of times this week, and 4 shots miss.
Yeah.
And then it's just one, and that's all it takes, and you're asleep, slumped up on the fence. Yeah. And so I don't think it's anything huge. I think a part of it is what you said. Like, there's no way to just say other than avoiding power shots. Like, not getting punched in the face by a heavyweight is a great starting point. Yeah. He did a good job of that against a lot of these other guys. Francis Ngannou is a guy it's hard to not get punched by. He is devastatingly fast. The power is freakish. Derrick isn't as fast, but the power might be even more freakish.
Yeah.
And so if you don't present him those opportunities, you don't show him that kind of telegraphed shot, maybe it goes different.
It's so funny. No matter how bad that first fight was, the thought of Francis Ngannou and Derrick Lewis fighting just like sets off fireworks. It is truly like two big bosses in a video game. It's like King Kong versus Godzilla. However you want to distribute
as
that.
As bad as that movie is going to be.
Yeah, as bad as that movie is going to. I thought it already came out because like the what was the one where was it a King Kong movie where there were like 6 other monsters in it still?
No, that was Godzilla 2, King of the Monsters.
There we go.
I have watched because I waste time like a champion.
I did tell my girlfriend we should watch it though, only because we both have like a fascination of Googling like photos of sea monsters and stuff. Like obviously not authentic ones. We just like the idea of really scary looking things, and so I feel like maybe I would never dare. Because I like U.S. Customs, but perhaps my girlfriend decided to indulge in some legal activities north of the border. I feel like she would like a bunch of scary monsters.
I mean, I will watch terrible movies just to watch terrible movies every once in a while. Sometimes that's what you need, is just a bad movie about fictitious giant monsters fighting each other.
Yeah, like we watch so many like super well received new horror movies, but it gets to the point where we're like, we just want something stupid and scary to look at. Like these are all really thought provoking and interesting and tense, but like where's a stupid jump scare when you need one? And Max El Kukui Holloway says Stipe's UFC debut, Rogan pronounced it Miocic. Bro, there's a lot of things I trust Joe Rogan about. Name pronunciation probably isn't one of them, but thank you for that piece of trivia. Okay, let's move on to the losers very quickly because we do have to be out around the top of the hour. First up, it's in the headline. It's funny, doesn't involve any professional MMA fighter, but possibly the most talked about story in the MMA bubble and outside all week. There's this footage of a football player, a wide receiver at OU, getting beat the fuck up by a man with MMA training. So you see them, dude, we're still over. Spencer and I are both here in BC, Canada, and the restrictions are still pretty tight. I will say, watching 4 grown men roll around in bar piss, makes me think that quarantine hasn't been so bad. But if you haven't seen the footage, I don't know how you missed it. But the video turns on, and there's 2 guys who I think were both college football players, sort of in the face of these other 2 gentlemen. The football player in question, Spencer Jones, visibly shoves the other man, who proceeds to light him up, hits him with a good combo, takes him down, hunts for a rear naked choke. And there's 2 guys, but I think the one we're talking about slammed the football player, might have gone out immediately, and then just started raining some punches down on him, required eye surgery. Now there's a whole legal fiasco. I think it sort of predicates on, yes, the football player appears to have stirred the altercation, but at what point should the MMA-trained guy have stopped?
Right.
But I will say, I'm sure there's sympathy on the football player's side. There's a lot of support for this MMA-trained individual, because they had a GoFundMe to raise money for his legal case, and it hit $50K pretty quick. How do you feel about this situation? Do you have any sympathy at all for the football player based on what limited footage we have?
I mean, first and foremost, I'm in the same boat as you. I saw that and was like, man, nobody's got a mask on. The one dude's got his drink in the bathroom. Like, there's just way too many people in there. Like, there's a whole bunch of protocol and etiquette stuff that's just wrong about that video. As far as, Spencer Jones and what came his way, I don't have a lot of sympathy. You picked a fight because you're trying to big time somebody, because you're Spencer Jones, Oklahoma Sooner, and dude called your bluff and just wailed on you. Now, does the MMA trained guy need to recognize the situation and maybe ease off at some point? Absolutely. The points made, the messages received. He's not like Spencer Jones isn't getting up and being like, I'm ready for more. He's not doing the Captain America. I could do this all day. At a certain point, when you've already beat the hell out of him, stop beating the hell out of him. But in terms of the initial, you shoved the dude and we're probably talking a bunch of shit. Kind of got what was coming to you.
Yeah, I saw some. I was listening to Luke Thomas read off some of the donations and the messages accompanying them, and one guy was like, "I used to get bullied a lot in high school, and I never had the confidence to stand up to them. So here's $10. Good work." And I think that's the sentiment for a lot of people, isn't it?
And so I will also share here that I am a very horrible, notorious in my younger days drunk shit talker to whoever. Like, put a few drinks in me and I think I'm 6'6" and I think I'm Francis Ngannou. And I probably needed that beating 6 or 8 times in my life. And so to see it, I go, hey, it's a guy named Spencer that got clobbered. That probably could have and should have been me in my younger days. But I mean, that's what happens. And more, I can't remember who it was that I saw. I think it was Pat McAfee, the former punter, now WWE commentator, part-time wrestler, whatever he is, just all around brand, saying like, there's more of these MMA dudes walking the streets now than you understand.
Truly.
And so you gotta be like, you gotta be careful. And I don't mean that in a like joking, playful, like, you don't know who you're messing around with, who you're talking to, what's going to happen. And so kind of pick your battles a little more wisely, Spencer Jones.
Yeah, I'll share a story here too. It's like, I've been training jiu-jitsu for a number of years. I don't consider myself good by any means, but what I've sort of discovered in my personal life growing up is like, when you have something to fall back on, it all, at least in my case, it makes you more, it helps you diffuse situations better. Because I remember when I was young and you get panicked and you have the fight or flight instinct and you think you're about to get into a fight and you don't know what to do. So you almost initially rely on, being aggressive. If anything, I've gotten really good at like de-escalating issues in public. But I had this friend, more a friend of a friend's, but I consider him a friend. My friend started getting shoved around by some dude in a bar, and then all of his friends, it turned like a little scrap inside the bar, and the other guys got kicked out. So, my friend and his friends were sort of the heroes of that situation. Now, one of those mutual friends thought he was hot shit now, so the next time they go out, he starts trying to pick a fight with the biggest dude in the room for no reason. And that dude was being super chill about it, and the tall guy ends up getting kicked out of the bar. So him and his friends wait. And when my friends come out, those guys are waiting. And this mutual friend is so scared that it's actually about to go down that I think he gets like hit once maybe. He starts running with his phone out, calling the cops on this other dude. It was so messy. And I told my friend there, I'm like, if I was there, I would have put our friend in a rear naked choke right away before I let him get into a street fight with his big ass dude. Because I know this guy and he can't fight. And I can't fight. But I don't know who that guy is. And it's entirely possible that he's going to waste you. So you got to be careful.
Yeah, Spencer Jones probably never got punched in the mouth like that before in his life. Let's be honest. And, at some point, it really does teach you a lesson.
Yep.
I don't advocate violence. I don't encourage violence. I want everybody to try to get along as well as they can. There is some value to knowing what it's like to get punched in the mouth.
Agreed.
And recognizing that I don't want to get punched in the mouth.
Agreed. And while I completely, while I have no sympathy for the college football player Spencer Jones, if things did pan out the way they appeared to on film, as someone with combat sports training, you also got to be careful, because if you don't know how to turn your switch off, and it appeared in that situation that guy couldn't turn his switch off, regardless of the, who deserved what, you could find yourself in a lot of legal trouble. Look, if you double leg someone on concrete and they get brain damage, you're probably going to jail. So you got to be very careful with your. There's no Herb Dean to rip Derrick Lewis off of Curtis Blaydes. You need to know when to stop, and if you can't because you're drunk or something, you should probably be conscious about how much you're drinking.
Yep, good advice.
There we go. All right, full of it, man. Chock full of it. All right, last thing on the loser section. This isn't really fair. I don't know why I put this in the loser section, but it appears that on the undercard of Jake Paul versus Ben Askren, we're going to have a boxing match between former world champion Antonio Tarver, famously as a TKO win over Roy Jones Jr. in 2004. But, it is what it is. Mike Tyson didn't get a TKO win over Roy Jones Jr., I can tell you that much. Versus Frank Mir, former UFC heavyweight champ, Bellator fighter. Frank Mir slipping on the boxing gloves. I think Frank is 41 in this case, while Tarver is 52. I think the older you get, the more that age gap really matters. To be honest, and maybe this is because I'm not like a boxing head, but Frank Mir and Antonio Tarver does nothing for me. And this is not to say I'm too good for freak show fights, but these two names in particular will not at all compel me to buy Ben versus Jake any more than I would have previously. What do you make of this matchup?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I mean, I didn't buy Tyson Jones, and I'm, very familiar and very fond of both of those men's work back in the day.
And terrible viewing experiences.
And occasionally terrible viewing experiences and wasting money at that too. I mean, and so, I appreciate Frank having some fun with it when he talked about it and announced it on his podcast with Richard Hunter, saying, it's not many times going forward that I'm going to get to be the younger guy in a matchup. And so I know he was signed and apparently preparing for, moving over to bare knuckles. And so it's boxing, same general training. He talked about how stepping in there helps him as a coach in terms of coaching his daughter, who's making the transition into MMA. But it's one of those things, exactly like you said. Antonio Tarver last fought, I think it's August of 2015. He's 52. It's a 52-year-old fighting a 41-year-old. The 41-year-old doesn't have any actual boxing experience.
Oh, not a great MMA boxer either.
And not a great MMA. Yeah, it's not like he is a striker that we were like, oh, well, at least it's a striker. He is a jiu-jitsu guy primarily. And so it doesn't move. I saw it announced yesterday, I think it was, or 2 days ago now. It doesn't move the needle for me. I understand why it's happening. I understand there will be more fights like this probably added to the undercard of that show or happening in the future, but it's not my cup of tea.
All right, quick prediction on that. Who do you got? 52-year-old Tarver or 41-year-old Frank Mir?
Tarver. It's boxing.
Yeah, agreed. Man, shout out to our chat because they basically just report the news for us on there. More than they contribute ideas, they do my job for me. They do what I should be getting paid for. So very quickly, we'll just touch on these two losers. Alex Oliveira fight is off. His opponent, whose name is escaping me, had some sort of illness, couldn't compete. And then Maxime Grisham weighed in at 210 for what I assume, hopefully, was a light heavyweight fight. Justin Jacoby. We don't need another repeat of last week. Okay, let's very quickly do a little UFC Vegas 20 preview. Hey, Spencer Kyte, you are the most fan-like media member I know, in the sense that it's like, if the fights are on, I'm watching. I don't care what it is. Godzilla, 100%. King Kong, go scrap, I'm there.
Yeah, right? 100%, man.
The standard is not quite as high.
You give me 15 fights on a Saturday afternoon.
You're in.
Sounds good to me.
Hey, a fight fan's fight fan. I like it. The guy. Guys, follow E. Spencer Kyte. He's one of you. Coach Kavanaugh. Hang out with E. Spencer Kyte. He's one of you. All right.
Ironically, I'm blocked by John Kavanaugh, as many people are.
Everyone is.
Many people are.
Okay, very quickly, we'll go to axioms. I don't want to do predictions too long, just because everyone does them. In fact, I got you to do them.
We've done them.
Video. Yeah. Rozenstruik, Gane. Who wins and how? I'll just ask you two questions. One, do you think Rozenstruik is as big of an underdog as he should be? Is that about plus 250 last time I checked? And do you think we got a finish from Gane here?
I do think we get a finish from Gane. I think the 250 is maybe a little bit too big of an underdog. I think it's a closer fight than that line, but I really like the potential of Ciryl Gane. The Rozenstruik fight with Alistair Overeem is the one that a lot of people are citing as like, well, he only needs one. I watched it back again yesterday. I still don't know if that should have been a walk-off stoppage. Like, that very much felt like Rozenstruik walking off made Dan Mergliotta be like, yeah, all right, I'll stop. There are 4 seconds left. You telling me Overeem couldn't have stood up and stumbled around for 4 seconds and then won on the cards? And so I think Ciryl Gane's the real deal. I think we see him be careful in the first round and he gets a finish somewhere in the middle rounds.
And then I'll ask you this real quick. What is your... Oh, actually, I mentioned this yesterday or last week perhaps, that Derrick Lewis, he says he wants to fight with Alistair Overeem, but do you agree that the right match to make is Lewis versus the winner of this fight? Because I think that, without a doubt, would be your number one contender once the smoke clears.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously, you have to think a little bit about Alexander Volkov, who had a great performance a couple of weeks ago. But to me, yeah, this is the guy you pair off with. The winner of this one is who you pay off with Derrick Lewis. I know he wants that Alistair Overeem fight. But that
honestly,
feels like
smart call,
it feels
though.
like it's a smart call, but it also feels like moving backwards. And I don't think the UFC is just going to be like, yeah, let's move backwards.
Because if they can turn that into a bit of a grudge match, which it already kind of is, only fueled further by the Curtis Blaydes KO, that's
true.
Relatively speaking, it's perhaps an easier route for Derrick Lewis to secure another win and stay active, by which point you assume he would then be sort of crowned the next number one contender.
Yep.
So good call on his end, I think. And then last thing, what's your sort of under the radar fight? Mine for sure has to be Jimmy Rivera versus Pedro Munoz. Perhaps won't be the most exciting fight. Jimmy Rivera is weird in the sense I love the guy. He's been super available to me in his career. Great striker, but it just always feels like there's a ton of activity, but it just always ends up going to a decision. It feels like a lot of it's like very high paced point fighting striking, and that's not intentional per se, but it kind of appears to be a trend. Nonetheless, I think that's your highest level fight on the card. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely a great fight. 2 top 10 bantamweights. The first fight was really fun. Pedro Munoz is a guy that I talked to Jimmy before this one. He was like, no, I love this fight, even though I already have a win over him, because I know we're going to just stand in the pocket and sling. So it should be fun.
Pedro will. So.
And Pedro 100% will. He is very happy to get punched in the face to land one on you. I've got a couple. The co-main event, I love the fight. Nikita Krylov, Magomed Ankalaev, both top 10 range E light heavyweights. I think the world of Ankalaev as a prospect. I really like, just from a weirdness perspective, the Alex Caceres, Kevin Croom fight. Mm-hmm. Caceres, you know what I mean? Like, Caceres has been around for a dozen years, always going to like him. And then Kevin Croom shows up at the media day wearing like yellow tinted sunglasses with nunchucks over his neck. I'm in. Give me all the crazy. And then the lightweights, Thiago Moises and Alex Hernandez. Really interested to see what a second fight under Mark Montoya does for Alex Hernandez, who got that super quick push after 2 wins, ran into a cowboy, learned some lessons, got punched in the mouth by Drew Dober, and is now kind of on the figuring it out tip. And so that's a really good fight that isn't getting a ton of attention.
Joseph Bose in the chat says, mine is Ashley Yoder versus Angela Hill, made literally at the 12th hour, and Montana De La Rosa versus Mayra Bueno Silva. Joseph Bose, a fan of the female fighters. Good to hear, man. They put on some scraps. I do worry it's a little bit soon for Yoder to be getting matched up with Hill. She just got her, her legs underneath her in the UFC, and now getting someone as tough as Angela Hill. I worry because I like both girls. I worry it might be a little too much too soon for Yoder. And last thing we're going to touch on, if you're still good to go for another minute or two.
Yeah.
Max Kukui Holloway wants to know, where does Volkov fit into the heavyweight picture? I guess it depends on what sort of matchmaking you do, but let's say Lewis gets the Overeem fight he wants. Perhaps you could do Volkov versus the winner of Rozenstruik. I think there's some combination of Overeem, or some sort of combination of Derrick Lewis, Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Ciryl Gane, Alex Volkov, right? Some combination there.
Yeah, so this is the shameless plug portion of this, because I wrote about my ideas for the heavyweight division earlier this week at spencerkyte.substack.com.
I was about to ask you to plug anyway. So.
The Keyboard Kimura newsletter. I think it obviously everything depends on how things shake out at the end of next month with the main event. For me, if Stipe wins, I say you give Alexander Volkov, Francis Ngannou. It keeps Ngannou in the mix. It's the kind of win that Volkov needs to really cement himself as a championship contender. And then if Ngannou wins and he gets the belt, I really hope they don't convince Stipe to do a trilogy. I don't think we need that again. I think we need to move forward and not backwards. And in that case, I think you give Alexander Volkov, whoever comes out on the losing side of this weekend's fight, for the same reasons. It's still very much two guys that are in contention. It's a main event caliber fight. You move one of them right back into the mix and go from there.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. And that is our show, guys. So, yeah, I mean, you kind of beat me to the punch here, but Spencer, where can the people find you?
On Twitter at Spencer Kyte, the Keyboard Kimura newsletter, spencerkyte.substack.com. I try to write 3 or 4 pieces a week. We do predictions every week that aren't going well this year because it's been a really competitive year in the UFC. I'm hoping to reverse that starting this weekend, but no guarantees. Don't get at me in my mentions if you follow my picks and lose money. It ain't my fault if you're choosing to gamble. And other than that, yeah, some easiest thing is just Twitter, man. I'm shameless with the self-promotion. So everything I do will come through my Twitter timeline. So just follow me at Spencer Kyte.
Yeah, and guys, if you're looking, I mean, first of all, go read Spencer's picks, and our picks over at Fightful, youtube.com/FightfulMMA. But if you're betting, go to an MMA odds breaker, go to MMA Mania, go to Dan Tom of MMA Junkie. Picking who you think is going to win and making strategic bets are two very, very different things. All right, that is all for our show today. That knowledge comes for free. If you guys want to support what we do, return the favor for that good faith, tip I gave you. Hit subscribe, tap the notification bell, leave a like on this video. The numbers are ticking up every day. It's great to see, so thank you for doing that. Shout out to everyone who engaged with us in the live chat. A special shout out to our downloads over, our podcast, audio-only listeners. You guys are the foundation of what we do. So thank you for keeping us afloat. You can follow me on Twitter at Shak_Fu. Enjoy UFC Vegas 20. It's time for that crappy outro. So stay tuned for everything fightful and so delightful. Peace out.